Hello and welcome to Shot Serpents. My name is Sam, and today the topic of this video will be corn snakes. I'm going to go over my personal history just keeping corn snakes in general, the care of corn snakes, and then the breeding of corn snakes. I figure there's no better time than now. I got the corn snake shirt on. And though it may not feel like it for us or seem like it for us humans, it is spring for the snakes. They spent the past 2 months, December and January, brumating. Simply put, that's a hibernation for reptiles. So they're ready to eat, they're ready to breed, and they are ready for the warmth of the year. So I suppose we'll get right into it. I've been keeping corn snakes now for just over 10 years. I want to say it's about 12 or 13 years, but it's definitely over 10 years that I've been keeping corn snakes. I absolutely fell in love with them when I first saw them at my first reptile show. It was probably 10 or 11. Then a couple years later, got my first one, and I just fallen in love with them. They're beautiful animals, pretty manageable size, and just an all-around great snake. Corn snakes in general, their scientific name, it's going to be Pantherophis guttatus. So that's their Latin name. Corn snakes are a non-venomous species of colubrid. So they're from the Colubridae family, and they're native to North America, most commonly found in the eastern United States. They get their name from that corn kind of pattern you can see on the bottom. Hopefully you can see that pretty well. Not sure if the camera's focusing, but she's really got that, as you can see, as it kind of gets more red as it goes down her belly, but that's where they get that corn name from those ventral scales, because it kind of looks like maize, you know. And they're just gorgeous animals. Oh yeah, that's right. I do want to just shout out this book here. This book is Corn Snakes, The Comprehensive Owner's Guide. It's written by Kathy Love and Bill Love. In my experience, or in my opinion, growing up, keeping corn snakes, they were kind of my heroes in the corn snake community. They've always been kind of coming out with some of the coolest stuff. Obviously wrote this book. And just even if you're just interested in corn snakes, even if you don't want to breed or want to keep them, it's a great read, packed with tons of information. I will say the scientific name is not updated in there. It's still Elaphey, whereas now it's been updated to Pantherophis. That's the true scientific name. But other than that, the book itself is packed full of information, and I would definitely recommend it and give it a read. And then last but not least, obviously this is Curtis, the corn snake. Just saw a close-up of her a little bit ago. Curtis is a female ultramel het for anery corn snake. Now the reason her name is Curtis is actually a pretty funny story, and we'll get into that a little bit later, so you guys will find that out. Alright, so I just wanted to put Curtis back just for the duration of this video. I will be introducing her with a male shortly, so I just didn't want to put too much stress on her, and we'll leave her be for now. But I did want to show you guys in the beginning. But that's why I don't have my gloves on and she's back in her cage. Nonetheless, I did want to bring up, there's kind of, within the reptile community, at least the snake community, there's kind of like, when you first get into keeping snakes, there's kind of two species that are most often like recommended. And those two are going to be the corn snakes, obviously, and then your ball pythons. Now, obviously, I'm a little bit biased towards corn snakes as they were my first snake, and I've had such a great experience with them. But I do want to kind of give a couple of reasons why I think that corn snakes are the better beginner snake. I'm not trying to take away from ball pythons in any way. I have ball pythons now. I love ball pythons. They're one of the best snakes out there. But I do think that corn snakes are going to be a little bit of a better beginner snake. And that's for these reasons. One being that corn snakes in general are a lot more inquisitive, at least as babies, compared to ball python babies. They're going to be a little skittish, sure, and squirmy, but they're not going to have that typical like ball up behavior like a ball python will. I've raised both corn snakes and ball pythons from hatchlings to adulthood, and I found that corn snakes will definitely be a lot more eager to kind of hang out and get to know you and squirm around and whatnot, whereas ball pythons are a lot more timid, which can be good both ways. However, the personality of the corn snakes you'll kind of learn right away, which has always been a favorite for me. Another thing is corn snakes, the babies at least, are usually easier to get feeding, especially on frozen thawed food. I've never had a problem getting any of my hatchling corn snakes fresh out of the egg after their first shed feeding on frozen thawed food. Whereas with hatchling ball pythons, I've never hatched my own ball pythons, but I've had hatchlings that usually they need to be established on live food first, and then they'll switch over to frozen. Now that's just my experience. It might not be yours, but corn snakes have always just been easier for me than ball pythons. And then number three, my third reason, will be just humidity. At least for first-time snake keepers, and I definitely had this problem in the beginning, keeping the humidity just right for ball pythons to have full, complete sheds versus corn snakes. Corn snakes, I found it to be a whole lot easier to kind of get that first full shed easier, like all in one piece, whereas ball pythons, it'll kind of come off in strands if you can't get that humidity down. I found for first-time snake owners that can be a little bit difficult, and it definitely was for me. Like, I want to get that out there. I definitely had trouble with it at first, and it's a learning experience. But once you get it, you've gotten it, and there's no problems you'll have. So those are just, again, I've got the corn snake bias, but I don't want to take away from the fact that ball pythons certainly have a higher variety of morphs and genetics than any other pet snake you could ever think of. There's just so much more variety with the morphs that you could get. I mean, there's thousands of different ball python morphs, and I'm not trying to take away from them in any way. I will put my hand in the corn snake bucket. I think they're a better beginner snake. Okay, so we'll get into the care. So care for them is quite simple, I think. Temperature requirements aren't too crazy. You're going to want to aim for a basking spot of about 85 degrees to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That's going to be kind of a good basking hot zone. You can also provide that with a heat pad. Just make sure you have a thermostat to make sure that heat pad's not going to go over 90 degrees. You can kind of push to 95, but 85 to 90 is going to be your kind of sweet spot. Ambient temperatures, you want to shoot for about 70 to 75. That's going to be like the golden zone. At least that's what's been most comfortable with my individuals that I've observed. You can definitely have nighttime drops of maybe 60, 65 degrees. That's not going to hurt them in any way. Like I mentioned earlier, these animals are native to the eastern United States, so which gets snow in the winter. So these animals can withstand pretty cold temperatures. But if you're just going to be keeping them as a pet and not going to be putting them in that brumation stage for the winter and giving them those seasonal temperature changes, then I would keep it at 65 to 75 degrees on the cool side, and then 85 to 90 degrees on the hot spot. And then substrate, I found that corn snakes prefer aspen bedding the best. I've got a little bit here. It's just this stuff. I'll clean that up later, so whatever. But that's kind of it kind of gets them to burrow. They love to burrow in it. And then the only difficulty I've had with it is humidity. If you spray it too much, like if the humidity is low and you need to spray the cage for whatever reason, it will grow mold. So what I'll do is I'll do probably 80% of the aspen, and then I'll do this substrate here. This is a sphagnum peat moss substrate, kind of just like cocoa fiber. I've used that as well. I'll do 80% aspen and then about 20% of the sphagnum peat moss mixture, and I'll put that around the water bowl, and that really will help the humidity. And that's kind of been the perfect mix of substrates for me. I do want to mention too, before I get any further, kind of a disclaimer, I guess. This is stuff that's just worked for me. It may not work for you, but it's worked for me, and I just kind of stuff that I recommend, stuff that I've learned, stuff that's worked for me. Um, so take it and use it, or take it and don't use it. Whatever. It's totally up to you. So, anyways, we'll get further into it. So, humidity requirements. It's not going to be super crazy as they are from like a pretty. Not that I guess they're not from the most humid area. I try to shoot for 40 to 60% with them. Sometimes that can drop below 40% too. So it really just depends on how you're keeping. If you're finding that the humidity levels are dropping below 40%, but your snake is still eating, shedding, and pooping and peeing efficiently, and having those nice full sheds, then it's fine. There's no reason for you to worry about the humidity if the snake is healthy. The snake is healthy. So sometimes the humidity is going to fluctuate in the wild, and as long as you provide at least one humid hide, that snake's going to go to it as it pleases. Let's see. We will go with enclosures next. What do I talk about enclosures? So when I first started keeping corn snakes, I was keeping hatchlings and everything under 2 years old in 10 or 20 gallon enclosures. Once they hit that 3-year mark, I would recommend moving to a 20 or a 40 gallon permanently, just so they can have more space. Now that I breed corn snakes, I do keep my animals in a tub rack type situation. I believe they're in 40 quart tubs right now. It might be 32. I'm not 100% sure on the exact size of the tubs, but in my experience, I've found absolutely no differentiation between the corn snake's behaviors in a front opening enclosure versus in the tubs. I still keep 2 inches of substrate in those tubs, or 1.5 inches of substrate. I keep a water basin that's large enough for them to soak in, and I keep multiple hides. So they've still got plenty of space. It's just they're in tubs versus they're in enclosures. And it works for me. Like I said, it may not work for you, but it works for me. And then with those racks, I use belly heat compared to like a basking spot. And then handling. They're one of my favorite snakes to work with, truly. They're some of the most personable animals. I truly think that each one's got a different personality, and sometimes I think I can pinpoint it out when they hatch. Some of them are feisty, some of them are timid, and then they grow as they encounter their stuff in their environment. It's really cool to see. Their bite really isn't bad. Babies can't even break skin. I mean, you can't even feel it when they bite your skin. Adults, a bite from an adult, it's not going to hurt at all. It's probably going to hurt less than a pinprick, and it might not even break skin. I've been bitten, now dozens of times from my animals, and all my fault, obviously, food responses and whatever, but it doesn't hurt. It's no big deal. It's like I said, it's like getting poked with a thumbtack. It's probably less than that. It's no big deal. Now I'll talk about the size of corn snakes. So if you remember Curtis earlier in the video, she's really not that big of an animal. She's probably 3 or 4 foot and maybe as thick around as like a quarter, maybe. She's not too crazy. That's kind of going to be your average corn snake size, is about what Curtis is. I've got a few that are a little bit thicker than she is and a few that are a little bit longer. I'd say your average adult length for a corn snake is going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 feet. Probably more so in that 3 to 4 foot range. That's what most of my adults are in. Like I said, they're a little bit like a skinnier animal, not as thick as a ball python, like we mentioned earlier, or like we talked about earlier. They're a pretty manageable animal. I've never seen a pure corn snake get over 6 foot. I'm sure there are individuals that are over 6 foot, but I haven't seen any with my own eyes. And the ones I have seen were hybrids with larger species of colubrids, like other rat snakes, or like a bull snake or a pine snake hybrid with a corn snake. So it's really not going to be a corn snake. It's hybrid at that point. And if if you listen this far and you really like corn snakes, you like how it all sounds, but 3 to 4 foot still sounds a little bit too big for you, there's a new morph. I've been kind of reading up on it a little bit. As much as I've read so far, it's a whole new genetic, like whole new gene. And if you're familiar with chickens and keeping chickens and the breeds of chickens, I've got chickens, so it clicked for me. But this new morph for corn snakes is called Bantam. So the Bantam corn snake is a genetically distinct morph of corn snake. This is as far as I'm familiar with, so I could be wrong on a few of these things, or some of it, or all of it. Who knows? But this is as far as I'm aware. It's a whole different gene, and the Bantam is actually like a miniature, like a dwarf corn snake. So you can kind of breed all the other, if you like other combos in the regular corn snakes, I think eventually the goal is for the Bantams to get like that. So it is a new morph, and right now they are probably a little bit pricier. But I will, I guess, mention that as more of those Bantams are produced and they become more popular, those prices will come down. I don't know if I have plans of working with them. I don't have any Bantams in my collection currently, and if I'm being honest, I do like the bigger snakes. So I probably won't get into them, but they're a super cool little morph that's kind of brand new, and they're small. So all right, so now that we got through kind of my history with corn snakes and the care of them, we'll dive into the breeding. This is where the fun story of Curtis and her funny name kind of comes to be. So truth be told, I really didn't ever want to breed snakes that lay eggs. My whole thought process growing up was I'm going to breed boas. Boas incubate their own eggs. They give live birth. It's so much easier. You don't have to deal with incubation. You know, that was the thought process growing up and keeping snakes. Several years ago, what happened was I was going through a little bit of a limbo here in the snake room where I was getting rid of some small cages and waiting for some bigger cages to come in. And knowing that, and I had 2 male corn snakes, or what I had thought were 2 male corn snakes, and knowing that they had cohabbed in the past together just fine, I thought, let's save some space. Let's throw these 2 males together and just keep them together for a little bit. If it doesn't work, I'll separate them. I'll figure it out. But let's just throw them together and save some space. You know, I've cohabbed corn snakes before. It's worked perfectly well. I know these individuals are, they're fine with each other. So no issues. So I threw one male in with the other one, and right away I noticed they're a little bit twitchy. What I recognize now as breeding behavior, but back then I had absolutely no idea. I just kind of assumed, all right, they're getting used to each other's scents. They're not really knowing what's going on right here. So I just let them be. I kept those snakes together for about 4 to 6 weeks. I was taking one of them out and feeding that one separately about every 10 to 14 days and then putting them right back in. And it was going pretty well. I wasn't really having any issues. And then about 5 weeks after initially putting them together, I come into the snake room, and one of the males is pacing back and forth in the front of the cage. I'm like, all day pacing back and forth. I can kind of see it tracked in the substrate. I'm like, all right, he's stressed. Let's pull him out. And at the time, the only thing I had to put him in was the racks. So I'm like, all right, maybe he'll chill out in the nice dark space of the rack and he'll chill out. Pulled him from the cage, put him in the rack. I was right. He totally chilled out. He went in the first hide he saw, completely chilled out. I was like, great. You were just stressed from being with the other male. That was my bad. Misunderstanding on my part. Now you're good. You're back in your cage. Or you're back in your own space, right? So about a week later, I open I'm doing checkups and stuff, and I open that tub that I put that snake that was stressed out in. I find a whole clutch of eggs, and he's wrapped around it. He is actually Curtis. So Curtis ended up being female, was bred to the other male, and laid my first clutch of eggs. And I was jaw dropped, I was like, guess you're a girl. My bad. No wonder. So raced to the reptile shop, bought myself an incubator, threw the eggs in the incubator, and then about 2 months later, hatched my first clutch of corn snakes. And I was hooked from there. Loved it. They've been some of the easiest to breed so far. Out of really, so far it's what I've produced successfully. I've had locks with other species, but nothing else produced so far, just the corn snakes. So it's just been a super exciting journey. And now I've got actual projects that I'm working towards and stuff like that. So I won't actually get into the different projects today, but I will kind of talk about how I breed them. And then on another video, I'll show kind of each individual. And then if you check my Instagram, I will be doing kind of some shorter length videos on it. So obviously that first time breeding corn snakes was a complete accident. Didn't have much organization or scheduling going on prior to that. Didn't even have the correct sexes of the 2 corn snakes that I had. Now it's much more streamlined and organized here at Shot Serpents with our corn snake breeding projects. We know the sex of our animals, and we know the projects we're working towards, and we're excited about those projects. So like I mentioned, I keep the corn snakes, we keep the corn snakes in racks. It's been the most successful, especially come breeding time. What I'll do is I'll pull both the male and the female, and I'll put them in these front opening enclosures to breed them. It gives them more space, and I found that when both of them are kind of given a new environment rather than just the male, it doesn't seem to, I mean, I really haven't found it stresses the female out too much to put her in a new environment that she's not going to breed. Especially because in the individual tubs, I feel like they're a little bit crammed with both of them in there. So I move both the male and the female in these enclosures. And what I'll do, so it's not brand new for both of them, is I'll grab a piece of decor or a hide or something from both of their tubs, and I'll put them in the new enclosure. So not everything is brand spanking new in there. There's still at least one item that they recognize the scent of. So I mean, that's worked great for me. And I guess we'll go ahead and get right into it. So I keep them in the tubs. The only thing that's a little bit different from, at least in my opinion, is I don't do like a full brumation. I'll do what I call like brumation light. It's kind of the term I've coined for it. Here in Phoenix, at least here in my snake room, it's difficult for me to attain such cold temperatures for the corn snake, like below 55 degrees Fahrenheit, for the corn snakes to get kind of that true brumation where their body shuts down completely. I also keep a mix of tropical and seasonal snakes in here, so some of them, you know, they're used to living at the equator, so they don't feel the effects of the changes other than the circadian rhythm. And the corn snakes and the other colubrids, they do get seasonal changes, so it's a little bit difficult to kind of get that heat right. However, what works for me is the brumation light. So come the end of November, usually the day after Thanksgiving, I will cut the heat with the corn snakes. They get belly heat year round except for December and January. Those 2 months, they get no heat whatsoever. No heat at night and no heat during the day. I found that my room during the day will still warm up to about 70 or 80 degrees in the winter, which is, you know, the corn snakes are going to move around at that temperature. They're not going to be sleeping at that temp. So what I do is for January and for December, I only feed the corn snakes 1 week out of those months. So it usually ends up being about every 4 weeks. So once, you know, once the day after Thanksgiving rolls around, it's usually, let's say, the 27th, 28th of November, cut the heat from the corn snakes, stop feeding them. Don't feed them until we get 1 warm week in December, and don't feed them again until we get another warm week in January. So that can be the tricky part, is you're kind of playing it by ear, playing it based off of like the actual seasonal climate and the weather around you in your local area. I found that really works the best for me, being here in Phoenix, where the heat, especially this winter, can be pretty constant. We didn't get super dips. We didn't get crazy dips into like cold temperatures, at least not yet. So um, this light brumation works for me. Then come February 1st, the snakes get heat again, and then I start introductions. They get heat again and food, and then I start introductions. During the breeding season, obviously for that first day of February, those males are getting food and the females are getting food. However, once they're introduced, usually the only sex that I'm offering food is going to be the female. The males will eat during this time, but usually all their energy is focused and like conserved for breeding. They have absolutely no interest in food. The males that I have offered food to during breeding season, they won't even take it. They're like, dude, what is that? I'm looking for some, like, a girlfriend. Get out of here, man. So that's what works best for me, is just leave the males alone. Don't feed them. If they look a little bit skinny, sure, definitely feed them. And obviously when I'm feeding the females, I'm pulling them out. I'm separating them for a day or two while they eat and then digest their meals, and then I'm putting them right back in. And I usually kind of wait over those 4 to 6 weeks, kind of towards the end of that 5-6 week mark. Once the female looks like she's getting a little bit thick and they're spending less time together, I pull the female, put her back in her tub, and she lays just fine. Shortly after that, what's awesome with corn snakes too is they are common. What's common with them is they'll double and triple clutch. So that means during that same season, they'll sometimes lay 2-3 clutches. So after they lay that first clutch, after those first 6 weeks, they'll lay that first clutch. I'll feed them again, and if it looks like they could lay again, I'll throw them back with the male. And during that time, I'm still not feeding the male. As long as he's looking healthy, he's fine. He doesn't need to eat. Throw the female back in, and she's good for sometimes 2, maybe sometimes 1, maybe 2 more clutches, which is pretty exciting. It's pretty crazy that they can do that. Pretty incredible that they'll lay that many eggs per year. Another thing that's different than most other years is instead of just doing 1 pair and 1 pair, this year I've got 2 trios. So I basically got 4 females and 2 males. So that means that those males need to get busy this year, right? So I'll have 2 females in one and 2 females in the other, and then 1 male in each. I'll have decor from each of their tubs in here, so each one of them recognizes the smell of at least 1 item. And then I'll breed them over those 4 to 6 weeks. Obviously, throughout that time, I'll pull the females every 7 to 10 days and offer them food. And then that'll be pretty much it. I mean, they'll go back in with the male, and that'll be pretty easy does it. It usually ends up being 30 to 45 days after that first initial pairing, they're going to lay their eggs. What I use for them to lay their eggs in is these kind of chandelier cups. They're originally like this. There's a light bulb that goes through the bottom. I get these. I work as a general contractor for my pop's general contracting firm. So when we get old chandeliers that are trash, I take the cups. I turn these cups upside down. I've disinfected these, and they're fully non-toxic and clean. And then I'll just put them upside down. Snake crawls right in the hole. I'll fill the inside with a little bit of sphagnum moss, and the snakes lay their eggs in there. They seem to work absolutely perfect. They keep the humidity good, and the snakes seem extremely comfortable inside these. And it's really, really easy for me to extract the eggs. All I do is put my finger in here, lift it up, and then I can kind of unravel the female around the eggs. I grab the clutch, I put the clutch in the egg bin, the egg incubation bin, close the lid, put that in the incubator. Super, super easy. And the snakes love it. So I do keep 1 in there, even though they're not going to be laying their eggs in these. I still keep the upside down chandelier cups in there, just so they get used to them. And then once they're starting to look thicker, like they've got eggs, they already have that in their tub, and I'll throw them in there, and then they lay the eggs in there. Pretty much works like that every time. It's been pretty nice. So if you've made it this far in the video, that's pretty much all the information I've got. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And I'll catch you guys on the next episode, or next video. Thanks again.